Well, thank you everyone for being with us today. I am Roger Ouellet, Director of the Security Practice at NOVIPRO. I'm accompanied with Alexandra Weaver, Senior Solution Architect at Semperis. Our subject today, like you might have heard, is activity. It's ransomware recovery. Is your identity system defense ready? And believe me, you need something for protection of your active directory. Quick notes on NOVIPRO. We've been created in 1993. We have about 130 professionals. Actually, the numbers probably has changed already. We're hiring a lot of people, so we're growing. So those numbers change, I think, daily. So it's not sure if it's 130 today. NOVIPRO has multiple solutions. Naturally, we have business solution that covers this strategy consulting. We got an ERP for manufacturing, distribution, enterprises. We do business process review, analytics, and we've got a wide offering on the infrastructures. But on my side, I take care of the security and networking. So we've got components for solutions for the IT and OT. OT is very important today. The hackers are working hard on attacking everybody, and they are designing today system to attack industrial network. They understand the code, they understand the protocol that's being used. So we need to secure this environment, and there's dependency with Active Directory now with the OT 4.0 and the OT 5.0 that's coming. Even more integration then. So we have those security offering, integration, the deployment, managed services for multiple solutions also, and consulting services. Also managed services, we've got cloud services, cloud, hybrid cloud, and application for those for different type of system. Quick note on our approach for cybersecurity. I like to talk about the risk for a business, the impact, the probability, not just to position the product. We want to position a solution or services that's in line with the business unit, with the business itself, instead of just positioning a product. So we discuss with the customers regarding business continuity program. And the business continuity program that we have is based on the DRI, Disaster Recovery Institute. We have split the DRI has split that in 9 steps. The initial step that we do is too fast, is the risk, impact, and strategy. The way that we do this is for each business unit, we're going to talk about what are their needs to function. So if we talk to financial, we talk to operation, we talk to marketing. Each of those business units will have requirements. Those requirements will be an application, a system, and what are their needs. So how much time they can work without it, how much, what system depends on what. And if something happens to the system, what is going to be the impact of that failure or that loss of services? These impact can be financial, operational, legal, there's multiple different type of impact. And we'll propose strategy to limit those impact or the risk or the probability that something happens. So that will help the customer, the business, to put in place what they need to put in place to protect the business unit, not the IT. The idea is not to protect the IT. The IT is just a delivery system. We just need to protect the business unit. So the business unit's telling us what they need, and we map it to IT and what services, what we need to protect, and how to protect it. The protection can be tools, or it can be just configuration that's, you need to segregate network or isolate If you're a smaller business, sometimes the OT is not completely segregated. There's no multiple segment. So it can be just configuration. So we're doing that concept with the businesses to make sure that it makes sense. Then we'll do the incident response plan and the business continuity plan, or operate the business continuity for the operation itself. What do you do without IT? But considering, if we keep that in mind, what we're doing, the risk, the impact, and the strategy, the risk, the impact, one of the things that we'll get out of this is the dependency. We mentioned before, Alexandra, the dependency that those systems has between each other, and how much the Active Directory becomes tied to every system.
Yes, it
So
does.
it is a dependency. So this is where, Active Directory, Semperis will come in to help us. If you can explain a little bit, what does Semperis do and how it helps?
Yes. Yeah, thank you. And thank you to everyone that joined. I appreciate it. And good morning, good afternoon. I am from Semperis. I am a senior solutions architect, and I'm here today to talk about protecting your identity. And the identity is really key, and that is stored within Active Directory. And we know that Active Directory is critical to an organization's security, right? And we know that with the advances in technology, moving from a 23-year-old on-prem technology to a hybrid, the most common example is Azure AD and your on-prem environments, that the only thing at the center of that is the identity. And most cyber attacks start with an identity compromise. So that's really what we're after in protecting. And Semperis has several products, one of which is DSP, Directory Services Protector, and that monitors your Active Directory environment in real time. We also have ADFR, Active Directory Forest Recovery, and that allows you to restore to your most current backup of your Active Directory forest of your environment, and then remediate the fixes, the attack vectors that were found and used to get into your environment. We have a couple of other products, but we'll talk about those a little bit more in just a minute. But what I want to talk about is protecting your identity, right? We know it's fundamental that cyber attacks start with the identity compromise. We know we need to mitigate risks associated with identity, right? And we need to have solutions in place, the ITDR, the Identity Threat Detection and Response, solutions that protect Active Directory, ultimately protecting your identity, right? We know that AD, Roger and I were talking about this a bit at the beginning, that Active Directory is 23 years old. So we know we need to secure it. We know we need to help it be secure in this modern day, right, with all of the advancements that have taken place. So let's go to the next.
Yeah, and that 23-year-old, like
Yeah,
is a really major risk.
it is, right? And we're going to talk more about that, but we have to make sure that we do our jobs, and we can't be reactive any longer. We need to be proactive. And that's where those ITDR solutions come into play that allow us as AD administrators to be proactive and protect something that is 23 years old, right? We know at the heart of this, again, is identity compromise. It's really fundamental. We know the reasons is it's keeping legacy environments secure. A lot of us are running some older equipment because we either don't have the budgets, or it's a requirement. There isn't something that's better quite yet, or maybe we don't have the headcount and the ability to implement. So we're using we have some legacy environments that we still have to protect, and the criticality of that comes back to identity. We know that this allows, digital transformation. We're able to jump into different, cloud-based offering solutions and different technologies. Again, the core of that is identity. And we might not even control as an organization what cloud-based services or software our users are taking advantage of. And so again, coming back to identity, all we have control over is that identity. And it's the building block of zero trust, which is the ultimate goal of any organization. And zero trust is the philosophy of, trust but verify and assuming a breach, right? And all of those things we want to make sure that we're able to implement. And if we keep our identity secure, we are. Really, the perimeter of our network has changed from that on-prem. And you can see here from the little gear that the new perimeter of our network is our identity, because we have users logging on what I call from anywhere, anytime, all the time. And so the only thing at the heart of that is our identities, right? Whether you're on-prem, whether you're in a remote office, or you're using cloud-based services, the core of that is the identity, and that's what we need to protect.
Yeah, and I some people will say that the user is actually the last firewall or the first firewall.
It is.
So it is. Yeah, and when you talk about you mentioned before, when you've got a breach or an attack, it's the identity they're going for. They will
all the time.
They will escalate privilege, and to do
Yes,
that, well, it's the ID.
Yep, it's the way in. And here we're talking about Active Directory is still central to modern security, because we're still using that, whether it's on-prem or in that hybrid environment, or if it's in cloud, right? Because the cloud identities extend from AD. The source is still Active Directory. This second bullet I always make fun of, because it says 97% of organizations surveyed say that Active Directory is mission critical. My question is, what do the other 3% say? Because any impact to Active Directory is going to have a devastating ripple effect in your environment. It is truly the keys to your kingdom. Everything is there, right? Your identities are stored there, and the majority of breaches start with that compromise on identity. And once in, and we're going to talk about this in a couple of slides, the cyber criminals are going to work very hard to gain access to an elevated account. So we know that there's going to be catastrophic consequences if Active Directory is breached, right? And we know that we want to have that zero trust model, and that is assuming that the hybrid AD integrity of the environment, that you are protecting it.
And one thing that I've heard, and it's an address for the Active Directory, but actually also for the file system or Azure.
Yeah.
Some people think that because you're using Azure AD, well, you don't need protection. It's in the cloud, so it's protected.
Yeah,
so it's
no.
fine. You're good.
No.
And that's one thing that it's really important people to understand. Not because you have an Azure AD that you don't need to protect this. You're still at risk.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Roger. When we talk about cloud service providers and different options within the cloud, we still need to make sure that those offerings meet our security requirements. Even though there's that mixed model of responsibility, we need to really make sure that it matches with our security requirements.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. Now here we're talking about the gateway to the goods, right? We were just speaking about when someone does breach the environment, and that's again with identity compromise, they're going to do that a couple of different ways. And we've seen the evolution, unfortunately, of this becoming more sophisticated, right? The password guessing, the brute force attacks, password sprays, an exploit vulnerability, the SQL injection, single factor VPN. A lot of us still have that running, and of course phishing, that will always be around, and they're getting better. They're getting more sophisticated in these attacks. That's why, on the bottom here we have the endpoint detection. That's really critical for your environment, whether that's through MDM or MAM. We still want to make sure we're monitoring all of our endpoints. But what happens at these different stages is the attacker is going to get in, right? And they're going to go straight to Active Directory. And that's really what ITDR solutions focus on, is protecting that identity. And then threat actors perform recon on that compromised client. And then they're going to move from AD joined system to AD joined system in that network until they come across admins that are still in memory. Now, that is an interesting tool we're going to talk about in a minute, But with those admin creds, they can perform privilege escalation to really owning your domain, owning that. And at that point, they can compromise an AD joined system and databases, and then they can get into the identity service and they can compromise users and potentially administrators there. And then they're going to extort, right, and exfiltrate organization data. So that's where we want to watch for, data that's coming out, maybe that is masked in legitimate traffic like DNS traffic. These are the ITDR tools and solutions that we want to have in place. And once your environment is, encrypted, that's really obviously a huge problem. And it's not just for the company, it's also for the users, right? Because we've seen ransomware evolve where they're not just demanding payment from the company, they're demanding it then from the users if that user has personal data. And then they're going to go to your customers, they're going to go to your competitors, they're going to go everywhere they can, and they're going to go to the dark web and sell it. There's, it's not just a single extortion, it's unfortunately built up at every pain point. These criminals are going to make money.
Yeah, they call it, it's double, triple dip.
It's awful.
Yeah, and thing is, when you pay a ransom on the dark web, you are scored. Once you're there, you paid, you got scored, you're scored, you're a good customer.
Yeah,
you are a good customer for them. And I keep saying, and what do you do with a good customer? You take care of them.
That's true.
You come
it's
back
very unfortunately true. Yeah, that's an awful way of looking at it, but you're right.
It is, but that's what happens. And that part that you explained, the recon, the process, the escalate, the exploitation of data.
Yes.
It's not something that happens within one day.
No, it does not.
They take their time to know you.
They're very patient. They lie in wait. They will learn how your help desk runs and what your processes are. They are going to learn who the person in charge is that's going to be making approval processes. They're going to know key names in your environment. They're going to know a lot about your environment. It's almost as if they have done onboarding themselves and gone through your classes. Yeah. So we have to be very leery. And as end users, we really want to educate our end users and involve them in this process and make them extremely aware, because ultimately, don't give out information. We don't want to fall victim to this. So don't click on links. Don't do a reply. If your boss really wants you to text them money, I guarantee you they're going to call you. And I still wouldn't even believe that.
Yeah, true.
AI.
Yeah. So any tools, you still need to educate your users.
Definitely.
You still need to get them aware of what's and detect those attacks.
100%. This is what we were talking about earlier when we said that cyber attacks start with identity compromise. I really like this picture because the first step is identity compromise. Ransomware is really the second. The very first entry point is someone's identity, and that's why it is so critical. We know that attackers are targeting AD because the keys of the kingdom are in there. And the last quote is my least favorite because it resonates so deeply and it's so true. Attackers don't break in, they log in.
That one hurts.
It does. It really does. So we're talking about different ways that folks, I don't want to say folks, I'm sorry, cyber criminals get into our environment. We have the phishing emails. They're definitely getting more sophisticated. They're exploiting system vulnerabilities. That's going to continue to happen. That's why patching is so critical. Botnets, we thought that was a thing of the past. It's definitely not. Malware, zero-day exploits, those will unfortunately always be a part of our environment. So again, patching, password attacks. That's where we can move ultimately towards a passwordless environment or stronger passwords, maybe requiring lengthier passwords, but not the frequency of change. MFA comes in there as well, right, into play. Ransomware is unfortunately part of our ecosystem, and they have gotten better. And so we want to make sure that we protect ourselves from these type of attacks. They're malicious and deliberate. To destroy an environment. They might not be a direct target to our company because there are so many different types of ransomware out there that some people are just unfortunately innocent bystanders. But that again comes back to what can we do to protect AD? What do we have in place that allows us as AD administrators to be proactive, to watch, to monitor our environment, to give us that real-time data, right? Because what we're ultimately after is the who, what, when, and where, so we can pinpoint when someone got into our system, and we can go from that point in time forward to hopefully be able to fix forward. But if not, revert to just a bit prior, right? We want to have that most recent backup. Our goal is to have the backup that's prior to that point of entry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we hope that we have that, right? Ransomware, we know that it is increasing, that phishing is still that primary method. And unfortunately, they are getting better and they look more and more legitimate. I have friends in the community, they said they were eating lunch the other day and there was an email from Costco and they almost clicked on it. And the guy said, oh my gosh, what am I thinking? Like, I can't click on this. And it was a phishing because Costco was misspelled, but it took that minute, to really think about it. And, you're in the middle of lunch and you just don't. So that's what we have to kind of untrain our users from doing, is clicking on those links. We obviously know that what people are after is stealing our creds.
I was talking the other day with a good friend of mine, and shoes, those shoes.
Mhm.
And she got major rebates, nice,
Yeah,
real nice shoes, cheap.
yeah.
So she goes and she put a couple of shoes in the cart, doesn't go anywhere else. She's on her iPad and she just cart. And she got alerted that she was getting attacked. Just she didn't enter any information yet. It's just like she got to the site, she's put the
Wow.
shoes in the cart, and boom, getting alerts that okay, somebody's trying. They're trying.
They are, and they're getting better and better. That's what's just so frightening.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So we're talking about ransomware risk and recovery as part of this, like what should be done, right? Because ultimately protecting the identity is the initial, the pre-attack, right? What we want to do. And then what we also hopefully have defined is our objectives for a recovery. And that includes, the RPO, the recovery point objective. That's the point in time we're going to go back to. And then the RTO also have that agreed upon, the frequency, right? And that's going to determine how far we go and the acceptable data loss, right? Because some folks don't want to go back, further than 3 hours. So their backups are run every 3 hours. Some folks run it in a morning and an evening. Those are things that need to be determined by your organization. So you can determine how frequently you run your backups and what's acceptable to your business units, your lines of businesses, downstream owners, application owners, what is an acceptable time period for data loss. And a lot of times, those are things that we want to have negotiated out ahead of time, right? We want to have all this designed. We want to follow the 3-2-1 backup methodology, multiple methods, multiple locations, right? We don't really want a single point of failure. So there is a reason to have multiple backup methodologies at play. In some cases, you might want to have a system state. Maybe you want to restore something that isn't restored in another technology. We want to have air-gapped backups, right? The immutable storage. We don't want that data to be changed. We want to have, again, multiple locations. We want to have regular BCDR, the business continuity disaster recovery plans, and we want to have those scenarios tested. I don't even think once a year is sufficient. I personally would recommend once a quarter. I know it's a lot of effort, but once you get that process up and running and defined, it is incredibly helpful because you will know the points at which you're going to struggle and where there are going to be issues. And outside of that technical scope, this is where we talk about the tabletop exercises. We need to involve the business unit because we have now if breached, the legal obligations. We're probably going to have press and communications. And so there's going to be really separate war rooms in my mind where there's the tech and the business, and then there's going to have to be a liaison. So all of these things need to be defined ahead of time. And I hope folks don't find them overwhelming, because you really can get this outlined. The CISA government site has a great tabletop exercise and kind of some checklists you can use as a guideline.
And to this, I'd like to add, because a lot of people forget about one thing, and this is when I was talking before about our business continuity plan, the program itself. You got to think about the MTD also. A lot of people don't even know about it. It's the maximum tolerable downtime.
Yes.
Because once you've done your restore, you're not operational yet.
No, you're not.
You still have to test everything.
Yep.
So maybe you still have a couple of days of testing before you're really operational. So
100%.
So it adds times to post the restore itself. So you have to think about that time. Once somebody tells you that I can tolerate 4 days, does that include the MTD? If it does, okay, how much time do I need to test this thing? Then I'll calculate my restore.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you, excuse me, brought that up, Roger. One of the things that I hear a lot from customers is, how quickly can I restore? And my response is, that really isn't the question you want to be asking. The question you want to be asking is, how long until I can restore to a trusted state? Because you are going to have to mitigate those risks. Someone got into your environment and all of that needs to be closed. Not only does it need to be closed, you need to reset a lot of things in your environment before you're going to be able to move forward, right? So passwords, all of these, you're going to want to check for hidden objects in your environment. Those are a lot of things that you're going to need to check on and thoroughly test and vet before you turn your environment back over. And a shameless plug for Purple Night that we're going to talk about in a minute, that is one thing you can run in your environment after a restore to see the stability of your environment and the attack vectors, that real-time or security posture of your environment at that point in time.
When I started in IT, the question was, what was my backup window?
Yep.
Time has changed.
Yes, it has. Remember when bare metal restores were going to work for us?
Yeah.
Yeah, not anymore. So we're talking about backups and the reality of a restore, how in Active Directory, you really don't want to go further back than 2 weeks, right? That's just going to bork your environment. Not a good idea. We know that Active Directory doesn't like being restored, and so we want to make sure that we have the ability, the best chances to restore that to that optimal trusted state. What we're going to need to do as part of that process, the restore of AD, is have a full metadata cleanup, right? That needs to be done. We might not restore all of our domain controllers. Well, we're going to have a lot of metadata cleanup to do. We're going to need to determine where an attacker got in and how your environment was breached. And we're going to need to restore to that trusted state. We just spoke to that a minute ago. And there are a lot of post-restore tests. And if you're not running the BCDR drills in your environment, you're not going to know what those are, because you are going to need to look for duplicate SPNs, DNS records. You're going to need to check your DHCP, DFS, all of those. Has that been restored, and is that functional? What was running on, or what is running on your domain controllers? A lot of times folks, don't really know, right? Because we spoke of this earlier, Roger, that we've inherited these environments. So we need to make sure that we're doing that full inventory ahead of time. We don't want to find out and get these surprises after, right? Because what a restore does of AD is it really exposes configurations that were unbeknownst to administrator, and problems that really they didn't know were going on in their environment. So everything we can do proactively, and again, that's involving the ITDR solutions, we want to make a part of our plan. So we have a post-restore checklist. We here at Semperis have put together things that we would come in and assist with, right? Some of those involve disabling privilege accounts and then creating just a couple of VAs or EAs just for the work that you're doing, right? We spoke to checking hidden objects. I just mentioned that a minute ago. Those are things we're going to need to do. We have other manual processes that we want to check for, duplicate SPNs, resetting the password, and then setting up tiered administrative models. That's important, and Microsoft has outlined that. There's a great Daniel Petrie article on that. I hope folks read because it's great. It's very clear and concise. Ultimately, the goal is returning Active Directory to that trusted state.
How many steps is there in the manual for Microsoft to restore 80?
I think it's like, oh my gosh, you're quizzing me. I want to say it's like 29 or 46. I don't know why the number is so wild and different, but the manual I printed out and it's crazy thick.
I think it's 40 something, and
Yeah,
if
painful.
you do one mistake, you have to
Start
start
all
all over
Yes,
again.
you do. Yes, you do. It's very methodical and it's fraught with it's error prone. And so you want to do whatever you can to avoid that. And like you said, it's step by step and you have to wait for each previous step to complete.
Yeah.
So it's not fun. So with the backup and recovery are critical questions. You obviously want to have leadership buy-in, right? That's the first step. We want to define what our critical infrastructure, our tier 0 systems are. And then we want to make sure all of our recovery parameters are defined and agreed upon. We want to have that documented. And that's what those BCDR, the business continuity disaster recovery plans, allow you to build, right? You want to have the RTO and the RPO defined. You want to have application tiering, all of those things in place. And when we do restore here, and we are talking about returning our trusted state, we want to know how long does it take? What are we recovering from? Like what's our, our source, right? And how many DCs are going to, domain controllers are going to be restored? Sometimes folks will say, oh, I'm just going to restore 2. Okay, well, is that going to really support all your downstream applications and all your, authentication? I mean, that's it could be a heavy lift, right? So those are things to look at. You also want to have a baseline for your last restore. And then also, what are you doing post restore to return your environment to a trusted state? And then how fast can you set up security measures that you didn't have in place prior, right? Obviously, there was some attack vector that wasn't fully closed, right? That's how they got in. We have to make sure this time that we close that. Otherwise, it's probably going to happen again. And in 2 weeks, you might be rebuilding your environment, or most likely will. We want to make, and that's what we really want to avoid. You want to avoid this altogether. Of course, that's the most obvious answer. But if you do get breached, you don't want to do this again. It's not a good experience.
Yeah. And when we were mentioning before, they take their time. So whatever they've put in there and your Active Directory might be there for the last 6 months.
Yes.
So that cleaning up, finding what and everything, not to restart again.
Yes.
Is fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So what people aren't telling Active Directory administrators, because I think we all focus on the process and then we're running it in an isolated environment, is that the restore is really going to take us longer than what we have defined of our, our RTO, because we have to fix those risks before we're able to turn our environment back over. The checklist is not automated, right? It is a laborious manual process. So that's going to take us a while to complete. And we need to realize we never want to go back further than 2 weeks. Now, that becomes a difficult statement, right? And there's a lot of wiggle room there, but the ideal is obviously to not have this happen. But if we have to restore, we don't want to go back further than 2 weeks. It gets really, really complicated. So that's when you start looking at options, and those options are pretty ugly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what can we do with this thing?
I know, let's focus on some positive. There are some things we can do, right? We want to have products in place that allow us to spot attack vectors and close them out before an attack. So this is the phases of an attack. It's the pre, the during, and the post. And what we want to have in place are solutions and products that allow us to get that real-time monitoring of our environment. We want to be able to see the IOEs, the indicators of exposure, and the indicators of compromise in our environment ahead of time, because this gives us, AD administrators, the ability to be proactive. And we previously haven't had that, right? We've always been reactive, but with the right solutions in place, you're going to be able to spot these attack vectors and work with your team to close them. One of the things I love about this is the security indicators, hopefully that you see in your environment, the assessments, right? The risk assessments that gives numbers behind or data behind the reason for headcount allocation in this space. And I think that's really important because Active Directory administrators have unknowingly been promoted into security. And this gives us the opportunity to have a seat at the table and be proactive in this environment, which has now become critical. One of the ways in which we can do this is with Purple Night. So I would strongly suggest all of you to go out there and download this. It's free. All you need is a domain joined system. You don't even have to be a domain admin to run this. You just have to be a regular user. It will evaluate your on-prem and your Azure AD, your cloud environments, Azure AD, and give you a real-time read of your security posture. It's that point in time. And then you can work to mitigate those risks. You can see your security score. And this aligns with the MITRE framework. So you'll know the indicators of exposure in your environment, and they're grouped out into categories for Active Directory. And Kerberos is one of the most, I would say, lowest scoring for folks out there. So don't be discouraged. What you can use as a benchmark to then work towards to mitigate and close those risks with your team. And then you can run the report again and look at the increase in your score, right? That's the ultimate goal. But why not run a free utility that can help you and your team close those risks in your environment, those indicators of exposure?
Yeah, and if you encounter any problems or you want help, we'll be happy to help you run this thing and figure out the risk that are present.
Yep, definitely. We also have Forest Druid, and this is another tool, and it's a different way of looking at an attack path. What this does is it goes in and looks at your tier 0, your critical infrastructure, and maps the path outwards. So it is looking from the inside out. And it's an interesting perspective because a lot of times we're looking from the outside in on the attack path. And I think it's really a nice change to focus on, okay, I have identified my tier 1 or tier 0 systems and even tier 1s. And then you work to find out how access has been granted to those systems. So you can see the path and the movement, and you can isolate specific systems and specific environments, and then again reduce access. Like, does everybody need access? And perhaps through group nesting you discover that more people have access to your systems than you want.
Yeah, this tool is really cool.
It is. It's like a 3D modeling. It kind of reminds me of like DNA mapping.
But it's fun to see, all what's relating to what, and it's very nice.
Yes. So we spoke about before an attack, and then during an attack, we want to have that visibility, right? We want that single pane into our environment where we can see what is going on so we can detect and respond, right? Our real goal is to remediate this as quickly as possible. And again, what ITDR solutions are in place that allow us to have that visibility into our environment and do automatic remediation in your environment, because that's going to help you maintain security and integrity in your environment.
Yeah, and that auto remediate and AR, it's
huge.
If somebody comes in, like we were mentioning before, somebody's in there for the last 6 months.
Yep.
What does he do within the 6 months with your AD?
Yeah.
What backdoor? What does he created? What does he?
Yes.
With that, somebody's trying to create another admin.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it can be auto remediate. Gone.
Yes. Yes. And you want that visibility. You want, and what I love to be able to offer and provide is that auto remediation for Active Directory administrators so those changes can be undone, right? And the real-time monitoring, this is provided by what we call DSP, Directory Services Protector. This provides us the ability, AD administrators, to monitor, detect, and respond. So this is a continuous read of your environment. Everything that comes across the wire that your DC sees is displayed in the GUI. It allows us the ability to determine every change on writable attributes in your environment. This is recorded in real time, so you can revert some of these changes, which is really nice. You can set up alerts and notifications. You can provide auto undo in some cases. That also provides we were talking about, domain admin group, right? The ability to say, no, I don't want anyone removed, right? Because I know my list, it's secure. So if we start seeing activity that might be masked as legitimate, we can undo that and provide compliance reporting. So it's your real-time security posture in your environment. It's going to be a great solution that is going to provide the who, what, when, and where. Yeah. So that's really the recovery, the post-attack phase. We're talking about the cyber first disaster recovery and the ability to have that full forensics and investigation. We're going to want to have that data. And there are several products in place that can provide that information because it is critical. You want to be able to close the attack paths that were used in your environment, and you want to make sure that it's secure. And so with ADFR, let's see, we're able to shorten recovery time. And they say, Dave, it's from hours, which is really true. One of the reasons is with our product ADFR, we're not restoring the operating system. And I think that's a big advantage because a lot of times that's where things will be hidden, malicious code and whatnot. And what you're allowing for is a restore, and you're removing the likelihood that malware will be reintroduced because we're just restoring Active Directory. So that is a cleaner and a faster process. It's automated, fully automated. So as many DCs as you back up, you can restore. And this does allow for an anywhere recovery because we're platform agnostic.
Yeah, so this is real important. You can restore anywhere. Yes. Completely OS independent.
Yes.
So you can start from local to in Azure or anywhere.
Yep.
That's really
it's really incredibly fast. So, we were talking about the 46 steps or whatever it is that, the restore, right? This is 6 clicks and you can restore your domain controllers.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we're talking about, again, identity. That's really the fundamental or that critical piece, right? That's what we want to secure. We want to be able to evaluate your environment. And I know, Roger, you're going to talk more about that. But all security and cyber attacks are starting with identity. So we, again, as AD administrators, have to work on educating our users and putting ITDR solutions into place that are going to help us protect Active Directory. We spoke earlier about Active Directory being 23 years old. And, when the advent of AD came about, there wasn't Mimikatz, right? There wasn't the Swiss Army knife of hacking tools. Well, there is now. And there's a kit called DC Shadow, and that mimics legitimate activity, but it can be used in an unfortunate way, right? And so we have to have things in place that monitor and protect us from those type of new hacking tools, and that is updated and keeps current with, the MITRE framework and new vulnerabilities as they come out. So security ultimately comes down to Active Directory. It's always going to be a target. So we have to be proactive. We have to maintain pace, really be one step ahead of the cyber criminals out there and the cyber gangs out there.
Definitely. And yeah, you said it. We can, NOVIPRO will help you, run purple nights and first and help you evaluate the risk.
Mhm.
Also, when we do our business plan committee incident, the risk assessment, the business impact. It's also
Yeah,
something we can, knowing the status of your activity, the health of your activity,
it's
also,
critical.
yeah, it's critical, and it position you in the proper way to for the next steps. And
Yeah.
like having your tools in place also, when I keep thinking about that hacker, that those people being there for 6 months creating backdoors.
Yes.
If you do manual, you're going to restore before you find that backdoor that was left in the Active Directory, because you said it, you want to restore not later than 2 weeks.
Yep.
They've been there for 6 months. You think you
Yeah.
had it in your backup? You do.
Yes. And that's it- we've got to be able to find that point in time. And so, in my mind, a restore involves really a two-pronged security or restore approach. One is finding out, who, when, and where they got in, and digging into the forensics of it. And the other piece is restoring and then going through those post-restore tasks to, close down your environment, and that data is coming from the forensics, and resetting passwords, duplicate SPNs, the metadata cleanup, all of that, and working to get that stood back up to that trusted state, running Purple Night again, and still correlating all of that data together to get to that trusted state where we can turn it over to your users.
Yeah, it's a must.
It is. It is. It's critical. And I know there was a question about lacework in there, and the chat. I don't know if we were going to get to the questions, and you might have to do some translating for me, Roger.
Well, actually, I've never seen lace work in that ITDR. I've seen lace work in other places where it's a good solution, but on the ITDRs, I've never seen it. I don't know.
Yeah, I know a little bit about it, but I didn't know that it could be used for a restore. So I'd be curious to learn more about it.
Yeah, yeah, as for the store, and also as the detecting changes in the Active Directory and being able to revert and stuff like that, I have no clue. Honestly, Dominic, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, if you can give us a little more information, maybe we can
No.
help you. One of the things that I think differentiates ADFR from some other backup solutions in this space is that we are just backing up the Active Directory, the ntds.dit, and some of the associated files. Again, that reduces the risk for malware being reintroduced to your environment. We are platform agnostic, so you can restore anywhere. Your targets, what we call targets, which ultimately become domain controllers, how the hardware abstraction layer needs to match your in production DCs. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more information, but please let us know.
Dominic, I think I should have your contact information, and I'll do some
Okay.
research, I guess, so I can
Yeah.
get
And he was saying
contact
that
you.
lace work is more about detection, and that's where DSP comes in, and that's that real-time monitoring of your environment, because every change that comes across the wire, everything that your DC sees is shown in the UI of DSP. So we have patented technology, and that's where, oh, I just saw this is Martin. Well, hi, Martin. So it is a patented technology where we're watching at the AD replication stream layer level. And that is really incredibly powerful because you're seeing this data in real time in DSP. So this is going to help you spot nefarious activity that mimics legitimate activity in your environment. You can set up indicators to monitor or alert you on certain activities. We have best practices that can alert you. We have some capabilities for auto undo, so things of that nature. That's really where DSP is going to benefit you.
Yeah, and to follow up with what NOVIPRO can do, we have strategies, tactics, and operational services. We cover risk, like we said before, the services for the risk assessment, the business continuity plan, but also CISO as a service, response planning, diagnostic, and diagnostic, well, it includes Active Directory naturally. It has to be
Yep.
it has to be there.
It does.
We'll have SOC as services. Also, a Semperis will feed information to a SOC, to a SIM, to be able to have this in the correlation in what's happening.
Yeah, and you can even filter that out. So if you want to watch specific things or feed specific items into your SIEM or SIM, you can do that. And so it gives some flexibility there, right? Which is really nice. Ultimately, every piece of data that you have, we're going to use in an incident response, issue, right? What I call a SEV1. We have a specialized team, 24/7, that provides the assistance to rebuild or restore your environment, right, to that trusted state.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part also. It's pretty much all-inclusive. Services is there to help. So when something happens, you don't want to start looking for numbers and figure out who's going to help me and how's. We're there. So Semperis, us, we're there, and we'll be. Although we will be there with you guys to do something.
And one of the things I love too, Roger, I want to mention is that even if you're not currently a customer and you were to knock on everything wood to get breached, Semperis would, if you reach out, we are going to help you if you get breached. I mean, we're really a force for good. And I know that aligns with obviously you and your team. And we really do want to beat the cyber criminals. I mean, what they're doing is just really awful.
Yeah. And at the we used to do we still have one this year, but we had a cyber conference, and one year the team was pretty much collaboration, how to work all together, because those hackers, they got their dark web, they're working together, they're sharing information. Well, we got to work together and share information and help each other against those guys.
Definitely. And that's one of the things I really like about Purple Knight and Forest Druid is there's a community of users out there, specific to issues that they have uncovered using those products. And I think it's a really nice environment to kind of share information with other folks that are facing similar struggles, in protecting AD. So there's a lot of resources out there, and I am a big proponent of us banding together, because I think it is going to take more of us banding together to be that force for good to stand up against. And when folks do get breached, or if that happens, I know there was in some instances where there was code was shared between people when they were breached, so everyone could jump on and assist. And I would love that community, that sense of community and sharing, to honestly stomp this out. And I know that is maybe an unrealistic goal, but how about reduce?
Yeah, completely right.
Yeah.
So like I was mentioning, we got a ton of partners. Semperis one is a big one for us, especially that everybody has Active Directory. So it's not some, I got a lot of partners, but a lot of partners are focused on one type of business, one type of this is for everybody. So we need that. We got some managed services also.
Awesome.
For different type of services, solutions. I wanted to share to you that we have we do every year an IT trends. So it's the most comprehensive study in the Canadian market. It goes for a survey for 635 Canadian companies. And it's conducted by Léger & Léger, which is a big survey firm. You'll find information on topics for cloud computing, IT investment, and a lot about cybersecurity. So you can scan that that code, and you will be able to access that study. It's really interesting. You'll get a lot of information from there. I think we're kind of be short for questions, so I'll just like to add to. I think there's Dominic, that says lacework is more of a detect anomalies. One thing that you can say about that is, I do have I don't resell lacework. I've got some other solution competitor.
Mhm.
It will, if somebody's trying to delete a whole OU in your Active Directory, lacework or another SIM is going to tell you, oops, damn, something happened. That was deleted. It won't stop you from it won't stop from dealing in it.
Mhm.
It won't revert. It won't, and you won't be able to restore from it. So you will be alerted with lacework. You'll be alerted with any SIM, with any SOC as a service that something like that happened, because it's major. Somebody create an admin, probably not an alert that you'll get from your SIM, unless you really tweak your
Yeah.
event logs. But that's not going to stop it from happening. So that would be something that you can say that there would be a differentiator. I got it. I think. Thing is, so that would be it. And well, question, like I said, I don't think we have much time for questions.
Yeah.
If you have any question or you want to reach out, here's my email address.
Mhm.
I want to thank everybody from attending this webinar. I hope you found it interesting. Alexandra, it was really interesting talking to you today.
Yes, thank you, Roger. It was nice chatting with you. And everyone, if you have any questions, I'm on LinkedIn, so please feel free to reach out. I'm slow, but I do respond.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
And
you.
we're giving you back 2 minutes.
All right. Bye, folks.
Bye.